Hey guys, good afternoon. As you can see, there is no Maddie Levine, there is no David Van Auken today. Unfortunately, they both have prior plans, so you guys are stuck with me. I am here, I'm Elle Dawson. We're just gonna get into some fun headlines that are happening right now. We don't have any guests coming on today. It's just going to be me chatting with you guys. So please be active in the chat. Let me know what you think. We're going to preview UFC Paris. We have a super exciting main event this weekend. I think this is a fantastic fight night card. So we're definitely going to get into that. We've had fights dropping off of UFC 307 and 308. We have the MMA community in an uproar over Tom Aspinall being the backup. Sean said, damn, we stuck with just me today. So definitely help me out. Come on, chat with me in the comments today. Let's get into it. UFC Paris, guys. We had no fights last week. A dead Saturday for me is always a bummer. I always spend my Saturdays watching fights. So when there are no fights, it's always kind of a dead Saturday for me. But I'm super pumped that we have Paris this weekend. We've got a lot of South Florida love on the card this weekend. We have, I think, four, maybe 3-4 fighters that all train here in Florida. First fight on the card is going to be Chris Duncan. Absolutely exciting fight. He's never boring. If you guys have ever seen a Chris Duncan fight, you know that they are always fireworks. Fighting Balaji Oki. He's opening up the card. We have another ATT guy, obviously Renato Moicano, in the main event against Benoit Saint-Denis in his home country. And then Eileen Perez trains here in South Florida as well. And Ivan Erslan is also an ATT guy. Super excited for him to make his UFC debut in Paris. If you guys have not heard of Ivan, he is a Croatian fighter, trains here in South Florida at ATT. Absolutely incredible striker, and they have given him such a beautiful matchup for his UFC debut in Ian Cutelaba, who is always exciting, is definitely a knock you out or get knocked out kind of guy. So I think that's going to be a super exciting and really wonderful matchup for Ivan in his UFC debut. So I know a lot of these fight night cards don't necessarily have tons of star-studded names, not as many big names, but they have been absolutely delivering. So if you guys weren't planning to watch this fight night, you absolutely should. Brendan Allen and Nasruddin Imavov in the co-main event is an incredible fight. And this feature fight as well, we have super talented prospects. William Gomes is a very technical fighter fighting in his home country. This is the first time we're seeing him since his botched weight cut against Jean Silva. I actually was kind of looking into, he has made some statements since that happened on that weight cut, why it happened. And it appears he has blamed it on the Brazilian water. Maybe had some food poisoning. He said he ate some ice cubes that came from the tap in Brazil, and he's worried that the water quality maybe made him sick, got some food poisoning from that. And his stubbornness to try and continue on to the fight was putting him in danger. Obviously, he is happy that his coach called the doctor and took care of it. But hoping he has a much smoother weight cut, obviously, as he's getting into this fight against Joanderson Brito, who has become kind of a boogeyman at 145 now. Joanderson Brito is terrifyingly dangerous, super exciting fighter. We saw him essentially explode somebody's shin with leg kicks. So very exciting technical fighter versus a very exciting, dangerous fighter as well. Sean says, it sucks Saturday with no UFC card. My work day gets postponed. And then this Saturday with UFC, have to work 1 till 9 and watch the card on my phone at work. Sorry about that, buddy. That's a rough one. And this is a great card. So definitely go back and rewatch any fights you miss. But I think this is an underrated card by all means. I'm looking forward to it. We also have a lot of fun stuff coming up on the Fight Bananas channel today and throughout the week as well. We have Dave is going to be live tonight with a brand new podcast on the Fight Bananas platform with Ryan, our beloved Ryan Quinn, who we have not seen for a while, used to do Betting Bananas for us, but he will be joining us with Dean Thomas tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are all tuned in to watch Dave and Dean and Ryan. We also have James Lynch has some really exciting interviews coming up on the channel with Matt Frivola as well, who is fighting this week in the UFC event. So, Elle, have you talked to Evloev? Do we think that fight gets rescheduled? So I wanted to touch on the main event for this weekend, but I think we really need to get into these fights that are dropping off of these big pay-per-views coming off. Man, Movsar obviously was prepared to fight. He was already in Salt Lake City. Like, he was already getting acclimated. He was ready to go. Aljamain Sterling, unfortunately, had to pull out of the fight. We are all super bummed that that fight didn't happen. I really wanted to see it. However, I think this is kind of a weird situation right now. They couldn't find anybody to fight Movsar short notice, which I'm honestly not surprised. I think Movsar is a very high-risk fight to take short notice. It's tough to match a guy up like that when he's too high up in the rankings to fight somebody unranked, which are the only people that really benefit from taking that fight on short notice. So I'm not surprised that nobody in the top 15 wanted to fight Movsar on 2 weeks' notice at altitude. That does not surprise me whatsoever. But it is unfortunate that now he is no longer on that card. That card lost that fight. I'm very excited to watch Kayla fight that weekend, but overall, I think that main card, outside of that fight, I think that main card really needed the Movsar Aljo fight. So I don't know if they're planning to move some fights from the early prelims or from the prelims onto the main card to juice that up a little bit. But I think that hurts that Salt Lake City card a lot to not have that fight. And then we also have UFC 308 has lost Alexander Volkov against Cyril Gane for that rematch. I think they'll probably find a replacement, especially considering it's heavyweight. So even though it might be shorter notice, if they find somebody, those guys usually don't have to cut weight. So I do expect that that fight will get filled. I would love to see Sergey in that spot, but it's unfortunate we've lost these big fights coming up on these pay-per-views. I have not talked to Movsar yet, but to answer your question, Sean, but Grant said he's already back here. So I do think it's confirmed that he is no longer on the UFC 307 card. He's back in Florida training. I don't know if the Aljo fight is rebooked. I know that's what Aljo originally said he wanted, but now we have Aljo calling out Diego Lopez. So does he want to fight Movsar or does he want to fight Diego Lopez? So this is kind of a bizarre situation that we're in right now. I definitely would love to have Movsar back on the show eventually, or just get his response so we can hear a little bit more about it. Can we get Gane versus Aspinall, or like you said, Pavlovich? I would love to see that. I think Sergey belongs there. Aspinall should not fight anybody unless it is for the undisputed title. I understand he would love to be more active, and we will get into how ridiculous it is that the interim champ is the backup for the title fight. We'll get into that later. But I don't think he should. If I were him, I would just wait, because either John Jones is going to fight Stipe and they're probably both going to retire, or that fight's not going to happen and Tom just is the undisputed champ. So I think there's no reason to take that. Hello, we have Andrew commenting several times in the comments. Hello, shout out from the Philippines. Thank you so much for joining all the way from the Philippines. Let's go. But yeah, I think Sergey is a great person to put in there. If we don't rebook the Movsar Aljo fight, I do kind of wonder what they do with Movsar at that point. Just be Arnold Allen. I feel like he deserves like a Volk at this point. But it's kind of bizarre, It's just a weird situation that Movsar is in, unfortunately. With him being back up in November, don't blame him if he didn't take it. I get it, but it's a risk I probably wouldn't take, I probably wouldn't do it, but I guess it depends how long he's going to be out. Like maybe the UFC has kind of like agreed to him, hey, if the Jones-Stipe fight doesn't happen, like we're going to do X. So there may be some stuff behind the scenes that's hopefully keeping him busy, because let's get into it right now. I just feel like he deserves that fight. Like I can't think of another time in history that this happened. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in UFC history, have we ever had the undisputed champ come back from a layoff and fight somebody else while there is currently an interim champ, and the interim champ is not in that title fight? Like that it doesn't make sense to me. And I would like to assume that is not because it's John Jones, but also because it's Stipe and Jones and they wanted that fight earlier. But overall, I think it's just because it's John Jones. And Jones has kind of made it pretty well known that he doesn't want to fight Tom Aspinall. Whether that's what he says, where he thinks it's not a big enough fight to fight Tom Aspinall, or what I think it is, which is where he thinks he might lose that fight because Aspinall is a very complete fighter and he has the athleticism to beat a guy like John Jones. I think that I want to see them fight, and I don't think we're ever going to get to. And I am disappointed that he has been given the privilege of choosing to fight somebody who is not the interim champ at this point in time. I think most people share that sentiment. If you disagree, let me know. I definitely want to hear it. We can bounce back to Movsar Sterling. Sean Sterling says Movsar versus Volk, or maybe a Yair. I wouldn't be mad about that either. I think both of those fights make sense. It's just getting the timing right. I would like to think that since the fight's been officially postponed from 307, that they'll probably just rebook them. But I feel like Aljo doesn't seem to want to fight Movsar. He's trying to skip over him. He's trying to push on to Diego Lopez, which I don't know. I don't think that makes much sense. If Brito wins, who do you match him up with? Ooh. I don't know. Like it's kind of one of those things where I don't know that Gomes is the win to get him a top 15 guy, especially in a weight class that's as deep as featherweight. But I know they typically don't like to match up two super duper exciting prospects together. I would love to see him fight Jean Silva. Like, I think that would be an absolutely fantastic fight to watch. But I don't know that would make much sense, obviously. I would. I'm going to have to look at the rankings and get back to you on that question, Jack Attack. Thank you for that one. Sean Sterling, it's 2 weeks away. When do we expect that Kamzat fight to get canceled? I don't know. I would like to bring up the extremely amazing DDP troll just era that we're in of DDP reaching out to Kamzat on a picture of him training shirtless. And he's like, put on a shirt, you're going to catch a cold. That killed me. I just can't believe that Kamzat is fighting. I feel the same way about the Conor fight. I almost changed my mind for a little bit. And then of course the Conor fight was canceled. And now we have Chandler matched up with Oliveira again. But I just can't see it. I don't think we see Kamzat get in the cage this year. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'd love to see it, but I doubt it. I think there's another short notice replacement just waiting for that fight. But let's pull up the featherweight rankings right now. I want to see if I can think of somebody that makes sense for Joanderson Brito, because I'm very excited for him. Am I freezing up a little bit here? Sorry, guys. I think my Wi-Fi is a little patchy, but let's see. We have Brito on a 4 or 5 fight win streak. The lone loss to Bill Algeo, Jack Shore, Jonathan Pierce. Nobody quite he hasn't really beat anybody right outside the rankings just yet. Gomes is definitely a great prospect though. I'm trying to, sorry, my internet is so slow. I've got to get an Ethernet cable. I say that every week, guys. I'm sorry. I suppose you could. I just don't know that he's ready for if he's beaten guys to get to, 5-fight win streak. I suppose you could match him up with 13 through 15, maybe Bryce Mitchell. I never mind seeing Bryce Mitchell get beat up. So have him fight Dober. You're just going to make Dober fight all the scary featherweights on short notice. John has been fighting for 20 years, fought everybody they put in front of him. He earned the right to go out how he wants. Also, fighting Tom wouldn't bring him as much money. I think John Jones is the draw. I guess he's probably not pulling in as big of pay-per-view sales on when he fought Cyril Gane as he did fighting a guy like DC. But I would imagine he's probably still making about the same no matter who he fights at this point in time. And I don't discount his legacy by any means, but I think that there's certain rules that there shouldn't be exceptions for in the UFC. And you can't devalue the title by saying, or you can't devalue the interim title, you can't devalue the interim title by saying that, oh, you don't have to, like, the champ doesn't have to fight you if you have the interim belt. It just makes the interim belt meaningless. Like, what if Stipe wins? How was, like, obviously I think Jon Jones will probably win this fight if it even happens. But if Stipe like pulls this off, what a bizarre turn of events that the champ got dethroned without ever fighting the interim champ. It's just bizarre. Dober is that guy. He's always willing to scrap, and he's a top 15 gatekeeper. But he's a lightweight. We're talking about featherweights here. So it's the only reason he fought John Silva was because Silva was a short notice replacement that went up to lightweight. So we're talking about gatekeepers for 145, not 155. I don't think Drew's short, but he is thick. He is not making 145 anytime soon. But Solomon, please respond if you disagree. Obviously, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think that's one rule that we shouldn't change just for Jon Jones personally. Let's see. We have Mitchell, Dan Ige, and Edson Barbosa right at the bottom of the top 15 for 145. I think you could probably make an argument to do like Edson. You could do Edson, and you could do Joanderson Brito. But I would like to see him. 5-fight win streak is impressive, but it's just such a deep division. I wonder if that's a bit of a jump to go from Gomes to the top 15 there. If Stipe wins, I could see him fighting Aspinall. I don't know. I feel like no matter what happens, he might be like, oh, I still got it. Like, I beat the best guy ever. Like, most of us can probably agree Jon Jones is the GOAT. So if Stipe pulls that off, like, yeah, maybe he'll hang around. I feel like no matter what happens in this fight, if the fight happens, I feel like both these guys retire. And they both deserve to, like, by all means. It's just it's so bizarre. And I understand that the reason this is happening is because this fight got postponed for so long, but it changes a lot that Aspinall has defended the interim belt, and we're just not seeing it here, you know? Sean Sterling, Edson is also a gatekeeper. I could see that. Edson, yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys that can still hang, and he's so incredibly tough. We still saw him beat Sadiq Youssef, and I feel like he is quite the guy to test yourself against. So he's always a great test for somebody moving up at 145. Should I parlay Chris Duncan? This isn't betting bananas, Christian. Should I parlay Chris Duncan by TKO and Moicano by submission? I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot. We haven't seen too much from Balaji Oki. He's had a UFC debut against a featherweight that took the fight, a very small featherweight, I might add, that took a fight on real short notice. So I feel like it's really hard for us to tell if Balaji Oki gets finished or not. I do think Chris is the more complete, more dangerous fighter. I think he's going to win. But I think this really depends what we see from Oki. If he's tough enough to hang in there, if he's not, I would play money line on Chris personally. I don't hate Moicano by finish, but I could also see a decision here. I don't have a good prop on either fight. I'm going to be completely honest. You can't discount Benoit Saint-Denis' wrestling and his toughness. Like, he is so gritty. I can absolutely see him having a good, like, doing well earlier in the fight. And then I do expect to see Saint-Denis slow down. Moicano is one of those guys that fights well tired. Like, he can always get the takedown, and he can always control you on the ground. So I do expect to see that. But I could see decisions on both fights, to be completely honest, Christian. I've stepped away from betting bananas, which Sean Sterling always says that I got fired from betting bananas. I didn't get fired, guys. It was my decision. I'm busy. I'm going into fight camp. So it was my decision to leave. But I have not been doing as much research on the betting side as I would have when I was still doing the show. Don't think Benoit would tap. You have to put him out or have the ref stop it. Yeah, no, the dude's tough and honestly a little crazy. I think he's got a little psycho in him. I could absolutely see him going to sleep. So I think he's a very tough guy. I think he's very difficult to finish. I think you have to knock him out. I think he has to be unconscious most of the time. That's what people who get fired would say. Fair enough. Fair enough. You think what you want, Sean. Like, oh, going back, I missed this comment from Solomon. It's not like John is fighting a bum. I never said Stipe is a bum. It just discredits the it discredits the interim champion, like the interim title. It just doesn't make sense from the way the system is set up. It's like if we took it and we put it into context of any other sport, it wouldn't make any sense. Like, the two best teams in football play in the Super Bowl. I do not watch very much football, guys, so please don't kill me here. But the two best teams in football play in the Super Bowl. Imagine if they were just like, oh, nope, this team that didn't win enough games. Stipe Miocic has not won a fight in 4 years. That's because he was retired. But at the same time, it's like, imagine if we just took somebody else and put them in the Super Bowl. It just seems weird to me. And I get it. It's John Jones. That's why it's happening. But I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't think I'm going to change my mind on this one. Stipe still has fires to fight in Cleveland. So Jeff could see a retirement. I feel like he's one of those guys that will always work. We still should get something that's like Elle's picks. It's just something quick. Truly respect your knowledge. I appreciate it, Sean. I'll be honest. I don't have the time to do as much research to give you guys really good picks. So I'll try to put something together every week that's just like very simple and easy for me to feel good about. I want to make sure I'm giving you guys good picks, not just spouting random nonsense. But these are my 2 cents on I think Chris Duncan's a great play. I think Moicano's a great play. I actually have one. I have one for you, Sean. I really like Ivan Erslan by TKO KO. I think that is a fantastic play. Jan Kutelaba, like we said, is a knock you out or get knocked out kind of die. Just don't make it a 3-leg parlay. I'm retired from 3-leg parlays, Sean. They're the bane of my existence. But I think that Ivan Erslan is a more technical striker than Kutelaba. I think with Kutelaba, you typically don't have to worry about anything besides the striking. But Erslan is a very well-rounded fighter, and I've seen him in the gym wrestling very well with high-level guys. And he is a massive light heavyweight. Very technical striker with a ton of power, which I feel like is a bad matchup for a guy like Kutelaba, who is a goer and is super dangerous for that first round. But I feel like he runs into a lot more things versus where Erslan is a little bit more technical and has a more reserved approach and lands cleaner shots. So I really like that pick. Dana White's Contender Series picks for tonight. Dude, I could not give you picks for Dana White's Contender Series tonight. Let me pull up the card. Let's see if there's anybody I know very well. There's actually been a lot of guys that I've trained with on this season, which is cool. So a lot of people that I do know. But I have not looked at the card this weekend. I don't know if I know these guys very well. We do have Torres Finney, I believe. Nope, that's not yet. That's next week. He's on October 1st. I really like him. Torres Finney is a really, really good mindset, very talented fighter, very well-rounded, great wrestler. We had him on the show. If you guys have not watched that show, if you guys haven't watched that show, I believe was that a week ago, 2 weeks ago? Go back and watch the Torres Finney interview. Really, really great mindset. Talented wrestler. Went on to MMA and has done very, very well. Let's see who else is on this card this week. Yeah, man, there's nobody I know well enough to give you picks on Contender Series. I love being able to see how guys do at the UFC level. That's how I tend to gauge fighters and rank them in my mind, is how well they do in those first like two, 3 UFC fights. Just because with Contender Series, it's so hard to tell what level of fighters guys are fighting on the regional scene. Some guys are fighting absolute killers, and those guys don't always have like stellar records. And then there's some areas of the country where the there's just not as deep of competition, and they just take what they can get when it comes to fights, and the level just isn't there yet. And so sometimes those guys come, they're 5-6-0 on the regional scene, they come to Contender Series and they fight somebody who's 5-6-0 in another part of the country where everybody's a killer. You tend to, sometimes you'll get really good matchups. And I gotta say, Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby have done a phenomenal job of matchmaking this season so far. We saw Gage Young, a friend of mine that I used to train with, had a fantastic fight, both super tough guys a couple weeks ago. I feel like they've done a really good job this season, but it doesn't always work out that way, even if they match records well. Remember when Pac-Man fought Mayweather? Neither one of them was the best in the weight class, but the money that fight produced couldn't have been. Boxing is a little bit different in a lot of ways, because there's so many champions in boxing. There's so many organizations, and those organizations have several champions even under the same weight classes. So it's a little bit different with boxing, where there's not one undisputed champ of boxing. Like, we can all agree that the UFC belt is the pinnacle of MMA. Like, if we took the UFC champion and had him fight in every other organization, most likely the UFC is going undefeated there, with maybe some exceptions. But overall, that's probably what we're going to see. So it's kind of hard to compare that to a boxing, where they tend to do that. They tend to just go, oh, there's a lot of money in this fight, let's match this up. And it doesn't, like you said, they don't always fight. They're not always the two best guys in the world in that weight class at that time. But which is one of the reasons I'm not as big of a fan of boxing overall as I am MMA. I'm starting to enjoy boxing a lot more, because I think we're seeing this younger generation of boxers with Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia, like these younger guys. They want to fight all the other tough guys that are around their age and around their level. And I'm those fights make me more excited for boxing. I think that the younger generation of boxing can make the sport better by doing that. Let's see. They are so, sorry, I missed this comment from Paul. They're so hungry on Contender Series, though, if they want it bad enough. The fights have been great this season. I know, like, we had, like, last year, Dana White had there were some people, we had, like, the beat Joe Pyfer, like, go out, like, push, be that guy. And he had a couple cards where it was the fights were kind of lackluster. People weren't trying to finish. They have not had that problem this season. The fights have been absolutely phenomenal. So if you guys have not been watching Contender Series, you really, really need to get into it. See, first fight of the night, Rose by submission. Second fight of the night, Kevin by submission. Great bet. There you go. Contender Series picks from Paul. Just like when they had that Bellator PFL card and the Bellator won like every fight. Yeah. No, 100%. And obviously there's a lot of reasons for the UFC not to do that, because God forbid somebody slips on a banana peel and loses a fight, like, it devalues their champion, which is why they don't do that. But chances are they would win most of those fights. So Paul said, I've been glued. Paul is tuning into Contender Series. All right, guys, we've been on here for 29 minutes. I'm going to wrap things up. Remember, 9 p.m. tonight, make sure you are tuned in live here at Fight Bananas. Will be on, I believe, the Facebook and the YouTube. Also, about the YouTube, go subscribe to the YouTube. Do that. Go there, watch us there, watch our shorts. Please help us grow this YouTube channel so we can make it as big as the Facebook. But that show will be live on Facebook. That show will be live on YouTube. Go watch Dean Thomas, Ryan Quinn, and our very own David Van Auken tonight at 9 p.m. Paul, I appreciate you. Thank you for joining in on the chat. Appreciate your chat. Ooh, cheers from Nova Scotia, Canada. Let's go. We got Philippines, we've got Canada. I need to do a day where I just tell everybody to drop where they're from in the chat. Sean, you're always great. Thank you, buddy. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We will get a Sunday morning brew this next Sunday. I apologize. Maddie and I were both very sick on Sunday. So we just decided, and there were no fights Saturday night. We both decided to rest and sleep in, but we will be back this Sunday. We have, I believe, Boxing Bananas this week as well. So there's definitely lots of shows coming up this week. So stay tuned. We'll have lots of stuff coming up for UFC Paris as well. Christopher J. Christopher James has cage side with Christopher James as well. I believe he has Alex Nicholson either coming up or you just had him on Monday. But we have him on Monday nights as well. So make sure you are tuned in to all the Fight Bananas shows. I will see you guys on Sunday, if not earlier, and have a fantastic rest of your week, guys. Bye.